Good afternoon and welcome to our session. We're so glad that you chose to come and spend some of your afternoon with us. I'm Kendra Brazel and I'm the superintendent of the Jasper School District, where I feel so blessed to get to live and work every day. And today we're excited to get loud and share part of our story with you. We feel like sharing our story is something that we're proud to do, and as we've all heard, someone's telling your story. Might as well be you telling the good one. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about flexible scheduling. How many of you find it challenging to meet all of the needs of your students in a typical day? Yeah, I mean, it's almost impossible, isn't it? And that's what we were up against, and we knew that if we didn't do something different, things like personalized learning and the whole child approach and even acceleration that Secretary Key spoke of, those are all things that we know are best practice and all things that we aspire to, but there's just not enough hours in the day, right? And so we knew we had to try something different in order to even have a chance at this daunting task. And so that's what Jasper High School did a few years ago. And they're going to share how all of that evolved with you and where we're at now and the changes that we're continuing to make. So welcome. I'm going to introduce the staff with you today. I'm so blessed to have a staff that's innovative, always looking to change and grow, even in their 50th year of education. And so today we have with us Principal Todd Parker, Amber Davis, she's the math instructor, lead instructor for the high school. Waynetta Valine, she's the literacy lead instructor for the high school. Emily Willis, school counselor. Jeff Ayers, he's science instructor. And Mason Durrell, he's the ag instructor, dean of the ag department. It's a small school. And then the lady that we refer to as the grandma of the group, very lovingly and respectfully, Miss Alice Cooper, and she's going to talk to you this afternoon as well. So there's going to be a lot of information presented in this session that you're probably going to have some questions about. And if you're like me and you need to see it in action to really be able to wrap your head around, really, how does this work and how could this work for us? We would love to have you come visit us, call, email anytime. We're always open to share what we do and to help you maybe adapt it. You know, in our district, we have 3 campuses that are very logistically spread out. And we have tried the same schedule in the other campuses, and it didn't work for them. We had to do something different. So taking pieces of this and making it your own is really what this is about. And we hope you get some of that information today. So I'm going to let them get started.
All right, once again, welcome to the session. Like she said, we have a lot of information we're going to share, and so we'll have a QR code at the end that you all can scan, and you can download the presentation. It's also been uploaded to the Sketch app. So just very quickly, in case you don't know where Jasper is, we're way up here in northwest, kind of-ish, Arkansas, right on the Buffalo River. Dog Patch USA was the big draw to the area for a while, but that's where we're located. And to kind of talk about our journey, so we started this journey back in 2016, and then the superintendent, I was the high school counselor then, gave a challenge to think outside the box and do something different in our schools. And so we did that. We started thinking about what we wanted to do. And so we decided just to do something different, but we didn't know what it would be yet. And so in the spring and the fall of 2017, we started having meetings with parents and students, surveyed the kids, met with staff to find out what their ideas were moving forward on what we could do to change our school. We had to go to the state board and get some approvals for waivers because we didn't start with the School of Innovation. We just did the waiver process, and then we came back later and realized that School of Innovation was the way to go. And so we jumped on that later. But we did receive approval from the state board with lots of waivers and to implement a flexible schedule, which is what you're going to hear about today. And as they go through and tell you bits and pieces of it, it's going to be hard to put it all together, but hopefully at the very end, you'll see it come together nicely. Then spring of 2018, we started working with the School of Innovation, the Office of Innovation and Education, and they came to our school, gave us some ideas, and we applied for designation. That took a while for us to get. But the DESI people finally came in 2019. We were designated, and people started coming and listening of what was going on at Jasper, touring our school and stuff. And currently now we're in the phase, this year our School of Innovation will expire, and so we're about ready to redesignate, hopefully, and start working on some new goals. So that's kind of the timeline. But why did we decide that we need to do something different? I sent a survey out to the kids in 2016 asking them their thoughts on school and the master schedule and just how school worked. And I will never forget the way they put it to me in one of the responses. They said, we feel like, now we're in a very rural area, right, of the state, so just kind of set the stage for it. They said, we feel like we are being herded through like cattle. Like we are just running through a school day, period after period, and there's no time for anything else except just go to class, transition, go to another class constantly. So I like the way they put it, herded through like cattle. But we knew there were some things with life after high school that we were not meeting the needs of. And our kids were lacking soft skills. They had no internship opportunities. Our CTE programs, we have the ones most schools have, FFA, FBLA, FCCLA, criminal justice, and they were doing great, but we wanted to increase involvement because we saw that kids who are involved in those things typically performed better in the classrooms as well. Early college enrollment was very low. We didn't have very many kids taking advantage of that. Our schedule was packed, no time for activities during the day, which is a huge equity issue for our area. Kids live way out from the school, and so it was a burden for parents to get the kids there for after school practices and stuff. So we didn't see a great participation in our clubs and stuff. So that was something we wanted to address, and then individualized learning, and then we want kids to take ownership of learning, and we didn't have true PLCs in our schools either. So before innovation, this is what it looked like. We had 8-period days, 45 minutes, go to the next class. Most stuff was happening after school. There was a pretty significant achievement gap between our SPED population and the gen population. There was a broad gap there we were noticing. Our student council was truly a picture in the yearbook, and that's all it was. They did nothing else. They didn't contribute to any decision making. They just took a picture and maybe had a pizza party throughout the year sometime. Interventions, something we knew we needed to do, but we had no time to do it. We wasn't sure how to put it in place, so we just kept thinking, we'll get there. We'll get there. Few students attending our tech center. That was a partnership with a local college in Harrison, and we didn't have many going there taking advantage of the welding and the construction technology, stuff like that. Most of the instruction was in the classroom, whole group, very little differentiation taking place. The teachers were controlling the paces of all the courses, and again, there was no time for PLCs. So you'll hear about how we changed all that, but this is what it looked like after innovation. We now have a flexible schedule, and they'll tell you about it. So we have traditional days, 3 days a week, and on 2 days a week, it's totally flexible. The kids make their own schedules with the help of an advisor. Now the activities are built into the school day for the most part. There are a few that fall in outside of the school day, but very few. We've seen that achievement gap start to narrow. We've started an inclusion program with our SPED, so that now the SPED teachers are going in there and they're allowed time to do that because they can meet IEP time that way and also during flex time. And then we have an active student council. Their voice was important. They sat down at the table with us when we were drafting this out, and they actually came and presented at one of the conferences on the student voice piece of that. Strong intervention program. We have weekly school-wide PLCs now, thanks to flexible scheduling. Lots of concurrent offerings kids can take, classes. We have 11 attending the tech center this year. We had as many as 22, and then COVID, right? So we're building that back up. Developing internship program. You'll hear about a couple stories of that in a bit. And we have some student-paced course offerings. We don't just let any kid decide the pace of their course or to accelerate through a course, but there are times when kids could do that. And so we've seen some kids finish chemistry in a semester, or some biology, I believe, was one in the semester, and still be able to do their labs through flexible schedule, and you'll hear that in a second too. And then there's lots of opportunities outside the classroom. So I'm going to let the Willis tell you about our model.
So we are a one-to-one school, so that means everybody gets a Chromebook. Our Chromebooks, the first time we did this, we decided that we would leave them at school. They would pick them up in the mornings. Then COVID, so we let them take them home now in case we end up being in quarantine or anything like that. Kids take them home, so we are a one-to-one school. We use a blended curriculum, which means that part of it is part of it is digital, and part of it is our traditional classroom instruction where the teacher has a book. Our flexible schedule. Now, when we start talking about this, I guarantee you're going to have 20 million questions, because we did when we started looking at this stuff. But our traditional days where our teachers actually get up, and we call those presentation days, are Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Now, for lack of a better word, it's flexible. So if we need to move one of those days, we do. So if, for instance, we have homecoming on a Friday and we're going to be having a pep rally, we might use that day as a flexible or a flex day. We try to really protect those presentation days. That's when like the meat and meat potatoes of our lectures go on. Okay. So our flex days are usually Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we'll talk about those more in just a little bit. Our advisory meets every flex day first hour. So when we are talking about our flex day, and I'll talk about advisory more in just a little bit, but on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, our students go through periods 1 through 8 just like a normal schedule would. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, all identity of periods go out the window, and I'll discuss that more in just a little bit. We have 4 designated flex rooms. Our 7th and 8th grade, we learned, weren't quite ready for that much flexible scheduling, so we have them put in a red and green room. Red room means that they are caught up on all their work, they haven't missed very many days, they have a little bit more flexibility to go to the gym and shoot, or go with Mr. Durrell to help work on Plc practice or whatever. Red room means that it's more structured and they have to work on certain things in order to be able to have that day. Our other rooms are going to be our virtual Arkansas room, where they meet every day. Anything like when they have college algebra, that has to meet every day. So they go to that room and they have that day. Every student is monitored bi-weekly. So when they meet with their advisor checks their grades and any zeros or anything that they have. So they are being monitored bi-weekly. That is huge in my opinion. I'm going to talk about advisory in just a little bit, more detail in just a little bit. So once again, the theme of our presentation is time serving kids, not kids serving time. And that is, if you think about that, that's a big one. Mr. Durrell?
Okay. Like Dr. Brazel said, I'm Mason Durrell. I'm the ag teacher at Jasper. I guess I could be called the Dean of Agriculture since I'm the only one that works in the agriculture department, but I enjoy that title. So I did not walk into Flex the same way a lot of people here did. They had planned this process before I started working at Jasper. They had not implemented it yet, but they were fixing to. And so our last principal, Mr. Lewis, was interviewing me, and I sat down for an interview, and he explained the Flex process, and he explained all about it, and he asked me, do you think this is something that you can work with? And like any good interviewee, I said, absolutely. But I will say, like some of you might have, I had a few doubts in my mind. I thought about, that sounds like a lot of kids moving in a lot of different directions. I'm not sure this may sound like a study hall, but when I made those assumptions, I didn't know the staff at Jasper High School. I didn't understand the culture, and I didn't understand the students. So within my first year, this opinion completely changed. I saw something that we're all always trying to do, and that's manage time. Time is the most valuable resource that we have in education. And flexible scheduling gives us the opportunity to manage our time in a much more convenient manner. So I'm going to talk specifically about how we've implemented this in our career and technical education programs. Being the ag teacher is going to be very ag-based. You're going to get to see some of the business side from Ms. Cooper after a bit. But the main thing is, on a flex day, I'm going to run you through kind of a typical flex day in the ag program. So we have classroom instruction. We have 3 days of presentation days where we give students instruction. On a flex day, if a student got behind, and there was a criteria that we set for students to come in on a flex day and work. So if they're missing work, if they are struggling in a class, they can come in on a flex day. And that's a huge part of flex, is helping those students. But it could be other things. It could be a student is working on a project in the shop. One of the biggest issues that we have in the shop is that we spend 5 to 10 minutes getting out in the shop, getting everything prepared for our project for the day. Once we get started, and then it's time to clean up. We don't have a very long period to actually spend time at work. Flex scheduling gives us an allotment of time much longer than that. A student can come to the shop and work for 2 or 3 hours on a flex day if they're not called out by other teachers. So it just gives us, and any of you who have ever been a science teacher or anything and you understand how labs take up a lot of time, you understand that. Another big component is we have a lot of competitions, whether it's FBLA, FCCLA, or FFA, we have lots of competitions. Now, traditionally, those competitions are a group of students. It could be out of several different ag classes. They don't get to practice during school time. They would have to practice after school. They would have to practice at lunch, whatever it may be. And that could be a huge difficulty. We live in a very rural area. Some of the students live 45 minutes from school. They don't have a ride home after school if you're not there if you don't physically take them. So flex days enable us to set up practices for those students. We have, my parliamentary procedure team will meet 5th hour on a flex day, every flex day. They get to practice at school. When we get close to some of our competitions, we may practice 2 or 3 hours on a flex day, depending on those students' availabilities. So that gives us a lot of room to wiggle. So last year we had I would call it a blessing because it is, we had the blessing of winning 3 state championships in our FFA program. Now, I'd love to say that that was something that I had accomplished. Of course, it was what the students had done, but it was also because of flex scheduling. Most ag teachers are trying to put together all of these competition practices after school. They're doing it at lunch, and we've got it built into class time, which I think is a huge advantage for us in our ag program. Another area that we have is certifications. And like I said, Ms. Cooper is going to talk a little bit more about that later. But this gives us time to work on, in ag we focus specifically on OSHA certifications. It's a 10-hour course that every student enrolled in ag has to accomplish at some point. And so instead of just working on it and taking classroom instruction time, that's something that they can work on a flex day when they have spare time. So we don't have to take any class period time whatsoever. If we're talking about welding, we can just keep rolling with welding or whatever it is. So I'm going to give you an example of a couple of students who have used flex scheduling really well. This is Hannah. So actually, right before we came, I went over my speech a little bit with Hannah. I said, is this okay with you? What do you think? And I'm not talking about Hannah's slide. I'm talking about all of it. Because Hannah is an outstanding student. She gave me advice on what she thought I should do. Hannah has had all the credits to graduate at the end of her junior year. When she graduates, she'll have 24 college credits. So she's a very good student. But outside of that, she's the president of FFA, the library club, the math club, FBLA. She's involved in different clubs like History Club, Beta, DECA. She was one of my 3 state champions. She was a state champion in job interview and competed in a national contest. She was a state qualifier in both food science and extemporaneous speaking, and she won the Arkansas Leadership Award in 2020. So all of these accolades prove to you that Hannah's a great student, but Hannah will be the first one to tell you. She is a student that learns stuff very quickly in class. She does not need to sit in a math class 5 days a week and go over the same stuff to keep up with the rest of the class. She can move ahead, and she can take that time and put it towards an FFA competition, something else. This girl uses flex days, 8 hours a day. She will be busy, and she's working, and that's how she's accomplished so many goals through this. But not every student is like Hannah. We have some students that don't love sitting in class. Our next example I've had since he was in 8th grade. Now this is Warren. Warren's an absolute great student. I've had him. He's shown pigs for me since he was, since I started at Jasper. But Warren likes to work with his hands. We all know that student that likes to work with their hands. I know one because that's the way I used to be when I was in high school. Warren has got a unique opportunity this year. Warren only comes until 4th period each day. He's got an internship with a local electrician. He's a very skilled worker in any shop class. He's always top-notch in the shop. I could give him any project, and he could do it with ease. He's just a great worker. Through FFA and our SAE, in an SAE project, he's actually built a lawn mowing business that he has spent some time leaving on flex days in previous years to work at. But the big thing about Warren is the fact that if we always push to send Warren to a 4-year college, if that was the only thought we had in mind, Warren may not do that great. He may not succeed. So this is a quote I saw on Facebook. It said, "Let's make school a place where kids spend less time stumbling over their weaknesses and more discovering their strengths. Now, Warren academically is a great student. He's going to have good grades because he works hard and he pushes himself. But Warren's doing something great. He's going out and he's learning a career in high school. This is a career within the next few years. He could very well go out and be making more money than me as a teacher. And that's something that I think as a school we should be really proud of.
All right. Will you do it?
Yes, I will.
How are y'all doing? Is it too warm in here? We want to thank you for coming. My name's Jeff Aird, so I teach science, love Jasper High School. And I wanted to talk a little bit about science, obviously, with content classes and how the impact that Flex has on us. So really, some of the aspects, so Flex provides additional time for me to bring in students that need extra help and work with them in targeted small groups or even one-on-one. I can schedule these students to come in as necessary and spend that one-on-one time with them. It allows also for my colleague over here, the Dean of Ag, mentioned setting up for any science teachers. Setting up for the labs is difficult, right? But in a 45-minute block, by the time you get set up and get it done, there's almost no time for debriefing. So now I can schedule these labs with back-to-back periods, so I have 90 minutes, and it just changes the face of everything. And so that also happen in other core classes. That could be for projects that are going on, days for presentations for other classes. They can just set these schedules so that they have that much time to be able to enjoy the whole experience and enrich that experience. And so I'll visit for a minute again about the science lab. Part of this would be fairly obvious. It's wonderful to have that much time. And so here's some kids working with, this was a pretty special day as in anatomy. We're dissecting a shark, and these kids find these babies in this shark. And they were so excited, at first not sure what was going on, a moment of discovery. The kids were really excited, and so before we started to finish up and do the report, they started going out and getting other teachers and bringing teachers into the classroom to come and take just a brief look at what they had done. It was just one of those like special moments that couldn't have happened without Flex. And so this just being able to do the labs and spend time afterward and schedule that time. There's a time investment on my part to do the scheduling, but you get used to doing that, and it's not difficult. It's just takes some logistics to do that. And so the science lab is an obvious place. Another place is with robotics. So before Flex, with our robotics program, it was after school. And we would only have just a few kids that could come and participate in that. And so through years, in robotics, we hadn't had much success. We had struggled. After Flex, the first 2 years after Flex, those 2 years, we went to the regionals in Fort Smith. And then we came here 2 years ago before COVID and finished, I think, 4th out of a field of 32. This is a small school. So here are some of the kids. This is a group of kids. Right after they found out we were going to regionals, first they're kind of in shock and they're getting ready to celebrate. But a lot of these students in this picture, they would come to I didn't schedule them to come to my room. What they did, they made sure that they had good grades in every class so that on Tuesday and Thursday, when their schedule showed those blanks on there for Flex, they were in that room. They were in my room, like without fail, all of them, all day, every day. And so I didn't have to call them out. They were so highly motivated that they would work hard to get their classes squared away and then say, hey, I have 3 Flexes today and I'll be in there. While they're working in the lab, and I would probably be working with other groups doing other things. It wasn't just hey, come in here and I'll work with you. They were doing this on their own. It's kind of that adage that, with kids, like if you find one thing they really like to do, they'll come and do the rest of it just to get to that one thing that they love to do. And so there was a lot of success tied to this. This could have never happened without Flex. Never. There's just no way. We would have had very few kids even participating. And so that's one really specific example of how this time could be manipulated in order to serve these kids better. We also were allowed to, because of Flex, we were able to pilot new things that we see. With this summer at a conference, we saw this at an innovation conference, and it's a self-assessment tool that students can use in the classroom. And so we have a few teachers who are using this now. And as the students go through, and I'm not going to go through the details of the form, this is just an example. Some of you may have seen this or taken a look at this already. So if I have the student that goes through and they're scoring themselves and I'm watching what's actually going on in class, that would be a kid that I would bring in on a given day in a one-on-one setting or a small setting and sit down and just visit with them about, look, you're scoring yourself here at a, you moved up from a 2 to a 3 and here, and let's talk about really, let's talk about how you see yourself versus where I think you really are in the classroom. It's about building relationships, and I'll segue to the last part of this. That really is the most important part to me, is building relationships. So when I bring students in, and sometimes it is one-on-one, I might have a group of 4 kids working on something they're behind here. My room is real large. I can be on the other side of the room and in private working one-on-one with a student. We have a student named Alan Gitzel. Last year, Alan never spoke. I don't think he spoke a word all year. He never even took his mask off all last school year. And so that was Alan. This year early on, I have Alan in class now, and I find out that we're doing binary conversions, and I could tell that he's just absorbing it. He's just eating it up. So I brought him in the next day on a flex day, and we're sitting there. He takes his mask off, and he starts talking to me. Like, I saw what he looked like. I heard his voice. Like, this kid is actually talking. But what he was talking about was binary language and coding and programming, and basically saying, you know what? This is something that I think that I could do. I like this. I think this is something that I could do. A teacher later that day in another class said, when Alan came today, he was different. He was laughing and joking, took his mask off. He's like a different kid. And like just one day, and not so much, it's just building that relationship, finding that one link that you can have with that student. And then the next day I bragged on him in class in front of the other kids. He liked that a lot. And so it allows you to build these close, rich, deep, meaningful relationships with students because you have that time to do that. Without Flex, I probably would have never been able to do that. Alan would have been in a class of 18 kids. He would have done the coding and programming, and maybe he may have done great. He may not have done so well. But Flex allows for that type of relationship building as well. Thank you.
All right. Have any of you guys heard of the Plc process? Show of hands. Okay, good. I'm in the right place. I was concerned. If I was going to have to teach you all that, we'd be here a lot longer. All right. So the Plc process at Jasper High School is really inventive. So I don't know if you've noticed yet, Jasper's not typical. We are not your typical school. We do things differently. We take what we have and what we're given, and we turn it into something that we can be proud of, that we don't care to come to Little Rock and show you guys. So in a typical PLC, or in all of our PLCs, the fundamental purpose and the reason for collaboration is to ensure that all of our students are learning at high levels. Not just the students that walk in ready to learn, not just our general education students, all students, guys. And sometimes we have some that slip through the cracks. I've had kids that, just because of Flex, they were able to pass Algebra 1. And that's something to be proud of. And they've taken those skills and they're using them with our upper level math teachers. So that's really important. So our PLC process at Jasper, I'm going to make it real short and sweet for you to try to. Flex days, we have our meetings and we go through our data, we analyze our data, and we discuss where our children are low according to the reporting categories. Numbers. Do you have any math teachers in here? God bless you. Yes. So you guys know. So we go through all of that, and we have a data sheet, a spreadsheet, where we have all of those reporting categories from their interims to their summative assessment. And we're going through and analyzing that data, and we're taking it and we're looking at it along with, the PLDs, performance level descriptors, if you don't know what I mean. Yeah, y'all know. All right, good. So we use these and we analyze these and we look over where they're at according to if they're in need support in ratios and proportions. And we read over this and say, okay, they can do this, but we need them to be in the ready category. What are we missing? What do we need to do? We analyze that. We decide how to implement an intervention that is going to help them, that is going to do something for them as an individual. Personalized learning plans is so important at Jasper High School, and we're able to do that because of Flex. If we didn't have flex, we couldn't do it. So during our flex days, we meet, we discuss all of this data, we plan our interventions, we decide how to schedule them and when to pull our kids out, and we also develop a reward system. We are rewarding for growth. We want to see growth, and we reward children for it, even if it is jumping from need support to close. They grew. We are proud of that. That is our whole purpose. They're growing at their level. Of course we want them in ready. We all want them in ready, right? But it's important that they know we are proud of them. So we try to make sure that we tell them that and show them that. One of the other things that we do with that, overall, it does build relationships, as Mr. Ayers said. So it's important that you have a relationship from kids with kids. I don't know if you've heard this before, but kids don't learn from people they don't like. It's true. It's true. And you can't be liked by everybody, but building a relationship and understanding a child more is going to help them succeed. They need that connection. Some of our kids are coming to school just for that connection, and that's a very powerful tool if we use that. So after we get all of this done, we pull our kids for their interventions. If they're one-on-one, if they are tier 3 and they're really needing all of that, or if they're tier 2, we can put them in a small group together and work together. Obviously, there's been a lot of learning loss in math because of COVID, and in general, we've seen a decline in some of math scores over the past few years. So that's something that we're battling all the time, as you well know, math teachers. So it's important that we recognize that we're trying to fill those learning gaps, and we want them to move forward, and we celebrate growth as we go through and see that. It's also important to remember that when we are pulling these kids for this instructional time, this intervention time, we are not disrupting tier 1 classroom instruction. We're not pulling them from any other classes, because art's important too. Music is important too. They need to be able to express themselves. We're not pulling them from any classes. Oh, well, you need literacy intervention. Let's just pull you out of English class and go over this. We're not doing that. We are pulling them on flex days so that they are getting that tier 1 instruction, and then they are getting a more personalized learning approach on flex days. So we are really, truly proud of our PLC process. And if you're struggling to find time, I don't know how you do it, because if we didn't have flex, I would be a crazy person. We don't have to meet after school. We don't have to interrupt our regular class days to meet. We're not having to send kids to the library so somebody else can watch them. We're getting to meet on our own time. We are planning, and we are doing our best to make hands-on, or we're working our way to making hands-on real-life mathematics instruction for these kids, so it sticks. All right, I want to hand it over to Miss Waynetta Malines, and she can tell you a little bit about the literacy program.
Thank you. Okay, here's just a photo of some members of the math team meeting in a PLC. But so I'm a literacy lead, and so what does a literacy intervention look like on a flex day? Well, like Ms. Davis said, all students receive tier 1 instruction on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And that's all students, even students with IEPs. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. Students that need tier 2 and tier 3 instruction, we meet on flex days, just like Ms. Davis said. We put together interventions for them with the help of the English teachers. They prepare lessons for the rest of us that are on the literacy team, and then we teach it to those students that are receiving that tier 2 instruction. We divide the kids into small groups, and we just take the total number of students that we have. We kind of just divvy them out, or maybe we find other ways, specific ways to categorize them. Usually it's based on what essential standards, they're scoring low in. And then once we have taught what we think we need to, and they achieve mastery, then they're done with their intervention. Okay, they can test out of it, but if not, then we move that student on to a tier 3 instruction with a separate interventionist. But all of that is done on flex days. And so we really believe in all means all. And so we have no pullouts for students with IEPs on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So we feel like the English teachers and the math teachers are the most qualified to teach English and math rather than the special ed teachers, and they both would say that. And so we leave those students with IEPs in the regular ed classroom, and the special ed teachers go in the rooms and actually co-teach some of the times. And then they just kind of provide assistance to the students, all students. They even help the students that don't have IEPs. And really that has helped culture so much in our school when they can see, you know, this teacher in my room that will help me also, okay? Not just a student with an IEP. And it just really helps with culture. And it alleviates some of the stigma that unfortunately sometimes is associated with having an IEP. And that special ed room, you know, now we have on flex days, the special ed teachers calling in these students, the students with IEPs, to give them their minutes and help them. But also regular ed students request will actually come to the teachers and say, can you call me in on a flex day? Because, you know, Miss Jernigan, the English teacher, she taught it, but I just didn't really get it. Could you teach it? And so it provides, you know, opportunities to learn it another way or from someone else. And we just, you know, it just really helps in the culture.
So you've heard about how we utilize the flex days. Let's talk about how we actually make that stuff work logistically, okay? So on a flex day, we have our kids all meet with their advisor first period, okay? You've heard all of my colleagues say relationships are very important to us at JHS. And so our kids are meeting with their advisors first period on a flex day, where normally a kid might go to math on first period on a regular schedule day. On flex days, first period is always for advisory. This advisor is going to build a relationship and mentor that student all the way from 7th grade until they graduate. So they will be following that student all the way through all those years and getting to know that student. That's someone that student can go to. They check those grades and they check for missing homework. So I'm going to show you an example here in just a second of our advisory document, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that. In advisory, we also incorporate our literacy program. So if we have something that we need to be doing as far as a Newsella or something like that, we do that during our advisory program. One of the biggest things is to communicate their flex day schedule. You heard me say earlier that all periods lose identity. So let's say that a student goes to math first period, English second period, and science third period on a regular Monday, Wednesday, Friday day. That is not what they will do on a Tuesday, Thursday. First period is an advisory. Then it depends on when that teacher calls out that specific student. So instead of going to math second period like they normally do, if the math teacher called them out 7th period, that's where they would go. We do have a few classes that have to meet daily, and those are a little bit different. Anything that competes would meet daily. We're going to show you the flex document in a second, and I think you'll understand it a little bit better. We also, our advisors help our students construct their schedules for the following year so that me as a counselor, we don't have to sit down with each student and do that. So our advisor knows those kids ins and out because they are with them 7th through 12th grade. And they also construct and update their students' success plans. So if you'll look at these two different schedules here, this is a schedule that we have of our regular day. This is our regular presentation day. It's just like a normal schedule would be. It's 1st through 5th, and then 6th, 7th, and 8th for most of our 10th through 12th grade. This would be a schedule that a random student would have maybe on a flex day. So they would go to their advisor. This one is actually for a 7th or 8th grader because it has this red green room that I mentioned earlier. So instead of going to a regular period, Ms. Cooper has called this student out 2nd period. Ms. Kildow has called them out 3rd period. Mr. Durrell wants this student 4th period to work on an FFA project, so they will construct this schedule for a flex day together with their advisor 1st period. We also make goals that day, so this student obviously needed to finish up a quiz in math, and so these are things that they are non-negotiables. They have to meet these goals or work toward meeting these goals. Mr. Parker?
All right, so I'm the principal, and we need to know where kids are at all times, and how in the world are we going to keep track of them in this crazy schedule that we've just tried to explain to you? Well, this is the background of it, and this is our Flex document that we've created in Google Sheets, and so it's a live document, and it's shared with our entire staff. And school is about to be out right now, but if I logged into this document, you would see that there would be tons of teachers up here, because it's how we know where kids are at and who you're supposed to be in your room every day. So I'm going to give you just a brief overview of it. And again, I've uploaded this, and you can get it at the end if you want to take a closer look. So at the very top of the document, we put announcements. This is actually one I took a screenshot of, I think, later last night. So Ms. Cooper will not be available because she's here. So that tells the flex room teachers who, when kids are not called out, they're in a flex room and they're working on assignments that were given to them. And if a kid needs to go see a teacher, they need to know that Ms. Cooper's not there, so they don't send the kid to go to Ms. Cooper's room. And so anything that's going to happen would be up here. Now, academics always take priority over a club meeting or anything like that. So you might see like the art club is meeting 4th period in the art room. All right. So if I am in an art club, but I'm this kid right here, well, I can't go because Coach Grice has me called out. Unless I go to Coach Grice and say, hey, I have open 6th period. Can I come see you 6th period instead? And if they agree, they'll update this and I'll go to my art meeting, right? So this document's got all the kids listed all the way through the whole school, who their advisors are, what flex room they're assigned to, and then it starts on period 2 because period 1 was advisory. All kids were scheduled as an e-school in their advisory. And then teachers go through here and they update this. This document resets itself every Friday at 4 o'clock, excuse me, and teachers can start requesting kids, or maybe it's on Sunday now, but they can start requesting kids. Like at 4:01, you'll see teachers log in and they're starting to request kids because the document is reset and it's ready for the next week. It also has another section that's over here. That's the Thursday, so Tuesdays and Thursdays are there. You'll see all these colors throughout. Black is a course that meets every day, and so those are courses the kids have to go to. Maybe it's college algebra. This is 7th and 8th grade, so it wouldn't be. But if you got on down to the senior high kids, you would see more blacked out because they have classes that meet every single day. But this might be a basketball period for some of these students that are going to be there. The teachers go in and put their names in, and if there is no name in there, that kid is in a flex room during that time. And so if they're in the green room and they want their basketball player and they've got everything done for that week and their goals are being met, they can request to go to the gym and maybe work on free throws or something like that. So all these colors have a meaning, and there's a key up here that tells where it goes. And then we have all kinds of sorts where teachers can sort it because it's a live document. So if one teacher sorts it one way, it sorts it for everybody. So we had to go in and put some custom filters on there where teachers can pull it the way they want. But then they can sort it by advisory. And so if Mr. Ayers is this kid's advisor, he's going to tell them that 2nd period, make sure today that you go to Ms. Rockles. So they have an advisory sheet either on their Chromebook, some do it digitally, some do it by paper, or they write down their schedule so they know where they're going to be during that day. Now, I pulled this before it was completely updated, so this would have been filled in a lot more. But this is the backbone of it all. So in the front office, they have this pulled up. I'll keep it pulled up in my office too. And so if we're looking for a kid, we don't look in e-school that day. We look on this document to see where they're at. So that's kind of how we keep track of them all. So looking to the future, what do we want to do with Flex? So I told you that our School of Innovation designation is expiring this year. So we're at renewal. We're working on some new goals. Internship is something we've always wanted to do. We barely got it launched. We've got a few kids in it, but that's going to be one of our new goals. Is we think we're in a better spot now where we can grow that program. So we're going to work on that. Add additional extension and enrichment opportunities. We know there are still some kids. This doesn't work perfectly. There are still some kids who sit in a flex room a little bit longer than we would like for them to be there, especially 7th and 8th graders who may not be involved in as many clubs. So we need to offer some things that they can do. So that's one of our goals. Inclusion, she talked about how our SPED is going into classrooms, and we want to broaden that. Right now it's for math and literacy. We want to get them in there in the other core classes as well. Student-led conferencing, we saw some big things with that last year when we just met with them briefly before or after an interim assessment. We sit down and talk about their schoolwork and set a goal for the next interim. And so we want to get in some student-led conferences, even to what used to be parent-teacher conferences being more student-led. And then we want to shift our grading practices to include more student self-assessments. And Mr. Ayers shared a little bit of that just before. So that's kind of what we're looking to do with Flex. And now let's hear from Grandma.
How many of you, like myself, enjoy change that sparks student enthusiasm and enhances learning. Flex has enhanced learning at Jasper High School and has allowed time for serving kids, not kids serving time. Winston Churchill once said, "To improve is to change, but to be perfect is to change often." Good afternoon. I'm Alice Cooper, and I am beginning my 50th year of teaching business education at the Jasper High School. I'm the grandma of our staff, and I am respectfully called Grandma by many of my students and colleagues. Last year, I had 45 students earn Microsoft Office certifications. We had 26 work ethics certificates, which focused on soft skills. In addition, our business education department had 22 CTE program completers, 12 of which were accounting, 3 in business finance, and 9 in medical office administration. You've heard my colleagues outline how Flex has been implemented at Jasper High School. Flex is a big change, and it caused some to withdraw or they were a little nervous about the program, but that enabled us as students, teachers, and administrators to grow, change, and transform. In conclusion, if we have created a spark of interest in our Flex program here today, we cordially invite you to come visit us and see firsthand how smoothly and effectively a Flex Day is in the life of a student, teacher, or principal. We chose change by choosing Flex. We believe the only way that we can grow and improve is if we change. Flex has been the most outstanding change I have ever experienced in my 50-year career at Jasper High School. Thank you.
She's awesome, huh? Okay, I know you got questions, and so we got a very short, like minute and 30-second TikTok, because that's a big deal right now, that we put together that's the life in the day, a day in the life of a student on a Flex. So it'll kind of go through a little bit of all of what we've talked about. Hopefully.
What's done? Better get my schedule for the day.
Third hour, fourth hour, what's that left out for?
I'm with this Willis applying for colleges.
Okay, good. And then fifth hour, you have Flex. Do you have anything planned for that hour?
I'm gonna work on an outline for my home class. I'm in green room because I'm all caught up. Yeah. I'm in red room because I'm missing too many assignments, but I'll probably be getting out today.
Spend for buying everything on the body. So, that 18 minutes.
So, before we leave today, that's one of our main. We're doing 3 of these too. So your first one, just like the team goal, seems to be the one that would be most important for you.
Okay, so I think one of the how I get each of these are ready.
Now, go down, cover your head, everybody.
But it's not like that before you put national school.
We're doing the lab over DNA. We
Sorry, DNA.
like massive, that big, and you put it through it, and all the
Yeah, it definitely broke.
Oh no. Oh.
But this is more like
This is our new 3D printer in Jasper.
Currently, we are running it through test prints, seeing on how it can print different types of PLA plastic.
To practice brotherhood, honor agricultural opportunities and responsibilities.
If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands.
Hey, you're doing great work here. What do you think about this overall?
So it's just a brief overview of Flex Day. And like they had said, we know it's a lot of information. We would invite you to come to Jasper and see a Flex Day in action because there is a lot of stuff that happens on Flex Days. One thing that we didn't cover, and I just want to make sure that we say, Flex Days are not optional. Kids can't stay home on a Flex Day. They're coming to school. And so they're there, but every schedule, so we have a master schedule like all schools do. But on a Flex Day, there's about 215 kids-ish in our high school. Every kid, they'll all have different schedules. And so English, 7th grade English might meet 8 periods a day because maybe that's what the English teacher is going to pull them in small groups. So there's just lots of things that happen on a Flex Day. But we cannot think of another way in the world that you get everything done and still build relationships with kids and love on them like we know that needs to be done if we didn't have Flex Days. So thank you all so much for coming to this presentation. We would be happy to answer any questions that you have. Feel free to scan the QR code. The PowerPoint's on there. Our Flex doc is on there. And if you decide to do something and you need a Flex document, don't recreate the wheel. We will be happy to share ours with you and get you set up so that it'll work for your school too. But the only piece of advice that I would give in closing would be don't take what we've done at Jasper High School and force it down to your school or in place at your school. It really needs to be something customized to fit what your needs are. And as Dr. Brazel said, some schools had tried to take this back and just push it in, and it didn't quite work. We set this up, and we made changes along the way to get it what we wanted it to be, and it's still a work in progress. So, again, thank you all for coming, and if you have questions, we'll be happy to take those.